We are like, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 61st session of Startup Buzz, hosted by the CII Startup Subcommittee of the Western Region. I really want to thank all of you, for us having crossed our Diamond Jubilee, so to say, of 60 sessions. Your feedback has been immensely helpful for us to evolve this over 60 sessions. And, today we are ready to start a mentoring program as well, from our side. You would have seen a lot of communication over the past few weeks. Please, as startup founders, take advantage of that. There's a lot which our mentors can share. Without further ado, we have a wonderful panel of guests, Leena and Sudeep. And to introduce them and to start the Q&A, Ninath, whom all of you know, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and our guests as well. Over to you, Ninath, Leena, and Sudeep.
Thank you, Ravi, for that introduction in motion. Thank you. I'm so delighted to see Leena again after so many years, and of course, to connect with Sudeep. Today's topic is very interesting, revolutionizing how India learns. It's such an important topic. It's a topic which will decide the fate of India and the next generation. And I'm so delighted Leena agreed to join with Sudeep in this session. Leena has had a lot of very interesting achievements. She is a visionary educator. She founded Kangaroo and Billabong in 1993 when no one even had thought of such kind of education. She disrupted traditional approach to learning, and now she's doing it all over again. You can't stop Leena. She's doing Dreamtime learning. Leena is an inspiring leader. She has convinced many parents, I don't know how, to move away from rote learning to a new education system that focuses on experiential learning. A lot of awards, but one of the most interesting award was the Economic Times Inspiring Business Leaders Award. I'm also delighted, equally delighted, so and I'm so happy the two of you on the panel. Sudeep Saha is a co-founder of Dreamtime Learning. He's a leader in action and building. It's great. I love people who are the education, who really believe in constantly ensuring that they are in the execution of a startup. So he, is steering Dreamtime mission with passion, agility, and a future-focused approach. So I'm going to start off with some questions for Leena. And audience, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. Don't wait. I'm going to take the question as and when they come. I'm not going to wait. So, Leena, you built Kangaroo Kids from a single idea to, I think, 80 plus schools. Uh, at that time, 1993, startup world had not even been invented in India. What were those early years like?
Whoa, the early years were they were challenging. They taught me a lot. I grew up in Australia where everything was black and white, and I came to India where everything is gray. A lot to get my head around. It was equally exciting. I think a startup's always exciting. Once you start something and then it gets into motion and gets momentum, somewhere something creeps in that says you're not learning enough, you're not disrupting enough, you need to do something all over again. So yeah, this is your 61st session. You're one short of my age, which is 62. And everyone thought it was madness when I said I'm doing a startup all over again. At the age of 50, I think I was 58, I think at the time. And everyone said, why, when you've sold and you've done everything else, why would you want to do that? I think it's what I tell parents about their kids, that if your why is massive enough to drive you, nothing, including your age or anything else, can stop you. And not the challenges either, because as anyone who's doing a startup, while it's really exciting, I promise you, you will have stumbling blocks, you'll have obstacles, you'll have speed bumps, and it'll happen all the time. And it's only if your why is strong enough that that you can actually find momentum to the business, because no business, no matter what your startup is going to unfold exactly the way you're going to imagine it does. Yeah.
No, no, it's great. I think it's good that you're again contributing to the system. 93 was a different world. 2026 is a very, very different world. And I'll come to that later. But let me quickly ask Sudeep, startups pivoting business plans, startups going to something different, but you have pivoted yourself in a personal journey from design engineering to AR, VR at tech, and now co-founding Dreamtime. What motivated you to move from steady state jobs to something which is education? What was the motivation?
So, I have always understood way early in my life that what's the goal of life, right? What's the purpose of life? We say in Dreamtime something like, what's your ikigai? And one thing I was pretty clear way early in life that there's one thing about having a life which is a lot more rewarding financially, but there's another thing about having a life which is built around purpose, which is built around consciousness, which is built around long time gratification, right? I always prefer to do the second one. And in that process, there could be nothing better or other option than doing it in the education industry, right? But across my entire career, I was always solving complex problems which can make things very scalable and very meaningful for people through the first principles. Even today, um, it's been 3.5 years since we started Dreamtime Learning, right? At one point of time, we didn't even have the website. We did not have our go-to-market strategy, but we were always sticking around the first principle to understand how do we solve complex problems with an eye towards scalability.
So, what would be your words of advice for someone who's, already entrenched in one area and thinking of another? Should he take the leap, not take the leap? What should be the moment when he should move? Let's say, I am, let's say, well entrenched in the marketing job, hypothetically, but I always dreamt of doing a startup, not necessarily education, any startup. Broadly, what are the two, three areas you think points a person should consider before jumping into something different?
This is a very good question. And I have got this asked several times by a lot of my friends, a lot of my connections. And one thing I always say that, look, if you are building a company for someone else, you are trying to optimize a system within a system, right? But when you are building something for your own, you are essentially building the system of its own, right? So every decision that you make has a second or third order consequence to it. From your hiring, product priorities, marketing functions, you are no longer an independent function. You are somebody who is running something which is deeply interconnected. And the biggest lesson I have seen founders talk about is not just the product or the business, but the conviction they build around it, right? And if somebody is ready to get into a market which is uncertain, getting into a day-to-day life which is uncertain, but have a conviction around it, then absolutely they're on the right path.
I'll just
Great.
I'll just add to
Yeah.
that. You need to have conviction around it. You need to assess your risk-taking appetite, because a startup is always going to have risk associated with it. And then if what Sudeep and I did, Sudeep's still very young. I'm towards the latter part of my life. Find an older founder who's starting up something all over again and say, I want to be an entrepreneur with you. So you can kind of Balance your risk.
And add all the wisdom too.
Okay, great, great. I think these are great words of advice. Lina, already questions have started pouring in, so I'm going to give preference to audience question. In fact, I was going to ask you the same question, 1993, 2026. And the question here is, what did the Indian education market look like when you started compared to what it looks like today? Is it comparable at all? Things have remained the same? Generally the idea
If
in people's mind, education market is slow moving compared to others.
Right.
Yeah,
So
over to you.
because, yeah, so firstly, we have to understand that in education, the customer and the consumer are two different people. Yeah, so you have people who you generally appease the customer, whereas someone like me is always looking at the consumer and what's right for the child who's at the center of this. Yes, education has changed, but not changed fast enough. And if you look at what I did in 1993, it was thought of as really, really disruptive and alternative. Today, it's become mainstream. And that's what I'm aiming to do again. Set a new benchmark for what education should look like in terms of higher consciousness, because the world has completely changed. And hope that becomes the benchmark for everyone else to follow, because they look at me when it succeeds, then they will follow, because there are people who are in it for different reasons. So if you look at some of the things have remained the same. If when I was running preschools, that was a way of eliminating students into high schools, right? So it became a gateway to being tested to enter high school. If you look at NEET, that's doing the same thing, right? It's not a it's more of an elimination exam than a inclusive exam. It's like, how do we can only have so many seats, how do we eliminate so many others? And some of the things that have not changed is we're still not putting as priority the human only traits, which is like, how do we build empathy? And there are real ways you can do that. You can teach empathy, you can teach creativity. You're not just born creative or non-creative. It's a way of thinking. You can build divergent thinking into your curriculum. You can build first principles thinking, design thinking. You can build all of this into how you're teaching kids. So that's what, yeah, I would say that it's changed, not changed fast enough, and definitely not kept pace with the change in the external world.
So let me, tackle the elephant in the room, because it's going to happen some point in the next 30
I
minutes.
love elephants.
AI and education, both of you, quickly, it's a big topic by itself, but of course, AI was not there in 93, it's there in 2026. How is it going to impact? And what are your thoughts for founders who are in the educational ancillary field on how to tackle these changes of AI in education? Sudeep and Lina, both of you. Yeah,
So I will let Sudeep speak about the AI product he's leading the
sure.
charge of. But what AI essentially allows us to do that we couldn't do once before, if you look at our population, one of the reasons we do rote learning and MCQ objective-based question and answers is because our population is so big. In such a large population, you have to be pushed towards an industrial model, right? So it's easy for me to check. It's easy for me to assess. So objective questions were the four. But now with AI, one of the key things that allows us to change is that you can do two things. One is you can personalize learning for kids, and the second is you can personalize assessments for kids as well. Right. So, and it allows you to assess things which were once very difficult to assess. So if I put the parameters in for a creative writing essay, and then I put a child's creative writing essay in, then it will check for those parameters. Like when I first started education in India, if kids wrote this beautiful, expressive, imaginative, creative work, but their spellings were wrong. No teacher was looking at the imagination and creativity. Everyone was minusing half a mark for each spelling that was wrong. So in fact, you were dumbing down kids because you were telling kids, don't be imaginative, don't be expressive, don't take risks with your spellings and stuff. So then kids started writing very simple essays because there was a real genuine fear. So I think, Sudeep will tell you how Dreamtime AIQ is built, but it's built on the
Sure.
same principles as Kangaroo Kids, Billabong High, or Dreamtime Learning is what does a teacher need, what does a student need, what does a parent need, what does a school leader need, and what does a school owner need to make better decisions. And that's how Sudeep's built it. And I'll let him tell you more about it.
Just to add on the top of everything that Lena mentioned, right? I think a lot of people see AI as in the school education business, something which is a external factor, right? Something which is standing on the side. But we see more of AI as something which is going to further strengthen the human relations across multiple stakeholders, right? So usually if you see in every school, there are four stakeholders. You have a school owner, you have teachers, you have students, and you have parents, right? And all of the stakeholders function today very differently than how it used to be 20 years before or way before that, right? AI is essentially not eliminating any of the stakeholders' job, but it is strengthening all of them together and bringing in more transparency, visibility, which was earlier quite cumbersome, right? Let's start with in typically a school owner or a parent profile that you see. Today's parents are much more involved into day-to-day academics. They are much more aware and they would like to be aware than a parent 20 years before, right? Where it was more where school was seen more like a glorified day boarding, right? Now, in this situation where a parent is more demanding than ever, in a good way, in a very, very good way, how do you give that parent more visibility? Or a school owner who originally started a school with a heart of an educator, but eventually got drowned in hundreds of admin and operations tasks. How do you still give the pulse of real education that's happening inside the classrooms? Right? That's where AI comes in, and that's precisely what we are doing as well through the Dreamtime AIQ, where we are bringing all these four stakeholders together through an approach which is much more data driven, which adds a lot more visibility and transparency to it. Because look, at the end of the day, everything that we do in Dreamtime learning is keeping the child or the consumer into the center point, right? And AI can only bring all the stakeholders because, like it says, requires a village to raise a child. We're just making the village stronger and more connected than ever through AI.
Can I just add to that, that people are looking at AI in the conventional way because if you ask AI, if a textbook asks you what is photosynthesis, and then you ask AI what is photosynthesis, it'll give you the answer. And then the kids
Right.
are copying that into that, and that's the kind of fear that educators have. But what if you flip the type of questions you're asking kids into higher order thinking questions? So one is, as an educator, you have to believe that you have to enter the world that the kids are in, not the one that you were a kid in, right? So if social media is here to stay, if AI is here to stay, why don't we ask more intelligent questions? So we'll do things like, okay, kids, you've got AI as a tool you can use. Now the questions are, the question can be something like, if Gandhiji had to do a salt march, what would Twitter do differently? What would LinkedIn do differently? To create the social media strategy and social media communication? Now they can use AI, but now they'll use AI to understand how the algorithms work differently. Then they might use Canva to create but let's face it, AI is being used by everyone in the workforce. So aren't we doing kids a disservice if we don't teach them how to use it in their productivity? Because all that's going to be valued in the future is what new knowledge or information or product or service can you create based on what's already existing. So it's not like Sudeep is building this AI product with 5 million coders. He's using the smarts of what AI allows him to do today to build a product. So I don't have to go and teach Sudeep coding, or he doesn't have to teach his 500 member team coding to go and build this product. He has
Sure.
to have the right thinking, the right questions he's asking, and the right intentions he wants for the product he's building.
Right. Great. Now that the elephant is out of the room, we've tackled. Let us get to the other questions. There are a lot of questions from audience. Maybe I'll direct this to Sudeep. Was Dreamtime Learning, and by the way, I really love the word, your name. Dreamtime Learning is fantastic. It
I'll
really
tell you what
conveys
it
a lot.
means.
So was Dreamtime Learning a response to changing customer expectations, technology, or a deeper change on in how children learn?
Very good question. I think Lena partly addressed this in the very beginning of this, right? While most of the industries do what's required for the customers, education is one industry where customers and consumers are two different entities altogether, right? At Dreamtime Learning, I think from the very beginning, we were clear about one thing: we are going to do what's right for the consumer and not something to appease the customer, right? Which is in this case, parent. Just 2 days before Lena and me, we were in Jabalpur, and one of the parent asked the similar question around that, what are you going to do to train our kids on JE or on NEET, right? And the response around that was that if that is what your child wants, we're going to do everything possible to make your child ready for it. But if that is what is your unfulfilled ambition and you want that to be done through your child, then that's not what we're going to do, right? So the core of Dreamtime Learning is all about higher consciousness. When Lena started working on the blueprint, the core understanding was that, look, we are gradually moving towards a world where there's a rising amount of anxiety, depression, there are rising amount of uncertainty. 20 years before, or even 10 years before, if I would have been a school-going student, there was a clear career path how to achieve success in life. In fact, I'm a product of that, to be honest, right? But today, a school-going child is living in a time which is uncertain than ever, right? We don't know how does jobs look like in 20 years from now or 30 years from now. So in this kind of situation where knowledge is so abundantly available, skill set is not scarce to only few, what essentially is required for to build the next generation? And these were some of the founding questions we asked. Lena asked herself and everyone around the team, which we call as curiosity and excitement architects who design the core of Dreamtime Learning curriculum while we were building this.
Okay. So, Lena, this question I'll direct to you. This from the audience again. I have my questions are still lying as they are. How should founders balance mission, revenue, and scalability in an education business?
So how I did it is I found somebody who was aligned with me on the mission, vision, et cetera, and who would focus on the scalability of the business while he allowed me to focus on the mission, vision, and everything else. So I truly believe, and I've seen it, like you can't be a master at everything. The thing is to focus on your core strengths and to either hire or to co-found somebody else to manage the balance. Everyone who knows me knows I don't enjoy talking about business, although I've scaled a previous business and we're scaling this business. Each time you find the right people who can support you and who have the smarts that you don't have, and allow you to focus on the smarts you do have. So each one, Sudeep and I are like an expansion of each other. If you ask me about what our cash and bank is, I probably know now, because the only reason I keep that in mind is, do we go to dilute and raise another round, or do we just keep going steadily the way we are, because no one's interfering with the growth of the business aligned to the vision of what we have. So I think the thing is that, and I've always believed, look, to keep your eye on your why and the how and what unfolds through people, through processes, through assistance from the outside world is truly what I believe in.
So the next one also, Lena, is very interesting. What is the one thing entrepreneurs misunderstand about building business in education?
One is, I think people feel it's easy. It's probably the most complicated, complex business there is. I think I'll watch like another business that aligns is restauranting, because everything counts. The ambience counts, your food counts, your service counts, your hygiene counts. It's so many things that count. Here, I think in education, you multiply that by 100. Every kid is different. Every parent is different. Not only is every parent different, every parent at a different stage of their child's age is a different beast. A preschool parent is different, a primary school parent is different, a middle school parent is different. They're completely different people. So it is an intense business. So only get into it, as I said, if you really are wanting to transform the lives of children, you really are excited by transforming humanity per se, you really are interested in, sustainable development goals, because it's through education that you'll actually teach them and foster the generation to proceed with them. If you've got a very strong why, enter business education. Otherwise, while it looks really rosy, it's one of the most challenging businesses there is.
So, Lina, let me press you on that, and might be relevant for founders who are watching you. Now there's, in the last couple of months, a resurgence of VC interest in education, which was kind of going down for a couple of years. Suddenly, last 6 to 9 months, we are seeing a lot of deals happening. It's good for the industry. Do you see this as a trend? It's a good sign for founders in the education system, or it's just one of those things which keep going up and down?
So there's always going to be a plus and a minus to it. I think if VC interest went down because things like Byju's happened, and
Correct.
everyone suddenly kind of got scared. And I've avoided Byju's and all of these of the world who've always offered me equity in exchange for the knowledge that I can bring in. But you always have to understand what someone's core purpose is when they're getting involved in education. So VC money coming into education will always have a plus and a minus. People tell me Kangaroo Kids and Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High are not the same that as they were when I was driving them. There's always going to be a plus and a minus. You've got more Billabongs expanding, you've got more Kangaroo Kids expanding because the money is there with the VCs. And that means parents just get more and more choices. Always a trade. VCs will drive certain things, but they will be driving the money. So you can get lost as far as vision, mission, and things like that are concerned. But hey, parents have got so much choice now. Once upon a time, when I entered the education, I don't like calling it a business, but when I entered the education arena, it was absolutely a seller's market. Now it's absolutely a buyer's market. And I think that is an absolute plus for parents.
Great. Sudeep, let me direct this question again asked by some audience member. How do you decide whether to build something internally, partner with someone, or acquire capabilities externally? So internal versus external. I think probably in the context of education is probably better, because otherwise it becomes a very broad question.
No, this is a question which is applicable to all of us, right?
Correct.
At various stages of building a company, we always want to build in multiple competencies. These competencies could be from product, could be from marketing, could be from HR. Like, for example, if I run a 1,000-member organization, that essentially boils down to how do I manage my payroll, right? Now, do I outsource it to a payroll software, or do I build an internal payroll software? Always decides on primarily for a startup about that, is that aligned to your core vision, right? If it is aligned to your core vision, then you are in the right direction. Otherwise, it might become a distraction. Now, that is, I believe, one of the most complicated area for a startup, that is to get distracted, right? We cannot be jack of all trades. And at times, if anything that gets distracted, that distracts us from our mission, is not something we should be putting our hands in the first place, right? And it depends from, having said that, I think it depends from stage of the company to, from a stage to stage. For companies usually who are in a early stage or a series A stage, they are more focused about getting their go-to-market strategy correct, getting their product legs to their core product vision, right? Whereas companies eventually which has reached like a series C, D, or even at a IPO stage, then it is more about how do I optimize everything to get a higher EBITDA, right? But having said that, look, even today there are companies which partners for right reasons, as long as that coincides in the right alignment to their vision. So for us as well, last 3 years, we kind of have been an extremely tech-driven organization. We have used tech from our HR to marketing to automation to almost all of it. And that's one of the reason which could help us in, even help us now to stay lean. Uh, Now, was it possible for us to build all of that overnight? Not at all, because then we would have drifted away from the core of what we are doing, that's education. So partnering was the right way around. So it all depends on your
Okay,
stage and distraction levels.
sure. So depends on the stage, but I think you've given some good guideposts. There's a gentleman called Shivam Jha. He's put three questions. I'll try and summarize them. Uh, they're all connected to human brains and intelligence. His thing is over last 50,000 years, human brains have shrunk by 10%. Then he's saying the education system is very rigid, for the human brain. And finally, he's saying the human brain is an outdated software. How do you update? It's very generic, but since you asked thrice, I'm just a quick response to that, please.
No, I think he's got some very powerful things he's asking.
Yeah.
So I think what we have to keep in mind is that our brains were built, um, um, and they're still in the ancestral mode that they once were. So our brains are still pretty much that of the cave people that once existed, whereas the world's moved really fast. So one of the things that is happening to the brain is the amygdala is getting larger. The fear center of the brain is getting larger because it's not able to handle the sensory overload. So we've taken away nature, we've brought in all this external noise, visual, sound, everything else. So our brains are not able to actually cope with that. I didn't know that our brains have shrunk by 10%, so that's something I'll have to actually look at. I do know that the amygdala has grown visibly over a period of time when it shouldn't. It should have shrunk. The amygdala should have shrunk because we're safer than we ever were. We don't have tigers or snakes lurking around the corner that would set our amygdala off. But now the amygdala has taken everything from Facebook likes to rejection to all of this sensory overload and gotten bigger. So that's one part of the question. What was the other part he asked?
So he's saying that human brain is an outdated
It is.
software.
It is. It is an outdated software. So at Dreamtime Learning, we're focusing on teaching kids more about their brains and their behavior than anything else. So if kids understand, for example, that kids want to survive. Kids' brains are born to learn to survive. So if we teach kids that, hey, when you play video games, it releases huge amounts of dopamine, and your brain goes into a dopamine overload. And then to come back to homeostasis or balance, which the brain will want to do, it doesn't know how to just go from this to this. It goes from this to anxiety back to this. And the more we take it from this to anxiety back to this, the larger we make the amygdala. Kids will naturally want to not play video games as much as they are. If we teach kids that, we've got too much choice and it's overwhelming the brain. Right? So if you open Netflix, the reason why people are watching less and less and the capacity to focus has gone down is because there's overwhelming choice and the brain cannot handle it. So if we teach kids these things, they'll understand how to build the habits, the intentional thoughts, the intentional choices, decisions that will help them. How do you build the right habits? How do you build the right values? How do you build things that are going to keep you moving forward and thriving as a human being?
No, that's great. I think it is quite a interesting question, and you give a fantastic response. Sudeep, I want to go to brass tacks now. I want to ask you a straight question. You have worked inside many organizations, and now you're a co-founder. How what are the suggestions you give or tips for people who are moving from, you're within a domain, and then now suddenly you have to handle the P&L, revenue targets, all that stuff. How do you make the transition, and what are the lessons you have learned? And
Hmm.
something which the founders should know.
I think there's no universally right answer to this. Most people who think that becoming an entrepreneur or becoming a co-founder is about being the boss, but that's not true. I think we have understood the highest of servant leadership, and that is something which is going to draw on anybody who is first thinking of transitioning into a role like me, right? Usually, when you are working with organizations, be it in any capacity, you always have a department or a distinction to manage, and there's always someone to refer to in case you are stuck, right?
Correct.
That's exactly what I mentioned about building something within a system, right? But being a co-founder or starting something, think of this like you are the system. For every problem that you have, the solution is you or maybe the advisors that you have. But like people say that no one knows your business better than you. There might be a lot of advisors, but no one knows your business better than you, right? So in such situations, it all depends on individualistic traits or individualistic aspirations at those given stage of life. For me, one thing that has always worked is applying first principle to any problem that has come or to any challenge that I have encountered. And second thing is the years of wisdom that my founder adds to.
Well, yeah, I think I'm a big fan of having co-founders. Single founder is not easy in India, generally speaking. It's not that it will not work, but yeah. So, Lina,
Let,
there are
let me add to
yeah,
that. Being a
sure,
founder
sure.
can be quite lonely.
Yes.
It can be quite stressful.
Yeah,
And therefore, if it's not about owning the maximum amount of the company, please find somebody who complements your skill set, who can share your pain, who can share the anxiety, and any problem halved is kind of dissipates.
And
sure.
also share the sleepless nights.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have probably exactly it's 5:35. I'm going to stop at 5:45. 10 minutes. This is a golden opportunity to ask Leena and Sudeep any question you have. So please punch your question right there. There are two questions on the same lines about leaving a legacy, Leena. How do you leave a legacy in a startup or an institution? And Kameshwaran has gone one step further. He's saying, if you had an opportunity to preserve your leadership for next 100 years using AI, what would you want that system to remember?
So, I think you go through a phase of life where you've gained financial security, you've gained other things. I self-actualized when I was doing Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High. I became a best version of an educator that I could. And then you come to self-transcendence, and only when you come to that you can start thinking about leaving a legacy. So people know me as operating Dreamtime Learning, but my motivation is actually our family foundation, which wants to bring a more equitable way of learning for kids. So I'll see drivers' kids and maids' kids, and they've got so much hunger and fire in their belly. And my son lives in Pali Hill. He's well taken care of. He's got everything he needs. So what do I want to do? I always say that I have one biological son, but the children of the world are my karmic children. And only as humans, when we start thinking about the kid who's dying in Syria, or who's hungry over here, that can we make this world a better place? And that's the true legacy, right? So you have to firstly define what legacy you want to live. I leave. I want the world to be a kinder, nicer place because I was born to it. I had the blessings to be born to it. Let me leave it kinder and to the best that I can. So every day, that's what wakes me up. That's what drives me. And how can I bring more equitable access and opportunity to kids who otherwise wouldn't have it. So that's on the legacy part. You have to deeply know what legacy you want to leave. What is a problem you want to solve in the world, going forward. And what was the second part of the question, Ninad?
So if it is you have to leave a legacy for 100 years, what do you want the system to remember about it?
Okay. So see, my brain must be 10% smaller in size than it once was. Um, I I just like everyone whose life I've ever um, come into interaction with. And that's not just people like Sudeep or my mom or dad. It's even like the vegetable vendor. Anyone who travels with me knows that the smallest of relationships that may not continue past that moment that I would want the other person to have lifted the other person in some way if I can. Through my words, through my kindness, through some form of laughter, engagement, whatever it is.
No, that's lovely. That's so nice. We've got 5 minutes, so I want to take maximum number of questions. So, Sudeep, next question is to you. Try and keep it, without losing the substance, keep it as short as possible. And this is something you are doing at Dream. And so, how can education business design for India's enormous diversity rather than treating India as one market?
Uh, I think education by in general caters to different markets even now, right? But what has changed is access to information. Earlier, a parent in a city would ask very different set of questions to their school compared to a parent in a rural setup, right? Today, thanks to the internet, most of the parents have got similar access to information, and the kind of questions that they ask are also changing in that format, right? And there was a time when people used to say that I would build a certain format of curriculum, a certain format of products only for parents who are into corporate jobs or who are into the metro cities. But that's not the case anymore. Today, if you see, the best of products are going to schools across rural India's. Today, if you see, the best of curriculum is going across rural India. In fact, at Dreamtime, we run a network of partner schools, which is there from metro cities to as rural as cities, which can be only accessed by bus, right? Now, this has to do more with the macroeconomic conditions and the changing consumer mindsets, right? Parents today are not just more aware, but even students are also way more aware, right? Thanks to internet. So yeah, I think there is definitely a bridging that's happening right now.
Okay, last one or two questions. Lina, there's a question from Kameshwaran. He's saying, if you were to start Kangaroo Kids today, 2026, not 1993, with generative AI, what would you do differently?
My lesson plans will be easier to build. My observations and my reports would be easier to build as well. So quality assurance and guidance, which was a big part of Kangaroo Kids, took many people and many hours to create. Today, it's much easier. If I prompt AI correctly, I think everything's changed with generative AI. And I mean, today I instead of going to Google and searching for like interior options or equipment options, I just have to ask AI which are the 10 best looking preschools in the world, which are the 10 best forward thinking ideas, and there you go. Whereas Kangaroo Kids happened because I grew up in Australia.
Right.
That access, as Sudeep spoke about, that access is opened up. So if you really have the guts and you really want to get into education, and you don't have to have grown up in Australia or studied in Australia or go to Australia to buy your toys. It's just the whole world is opened up.
Okay, here's the last question to both of you. It's asked by Shivam. I was, in any case, planning to ask, and this is the final question. Also, lace your last comment with some bit of advice for young founders, not just education, as some tip, one kind of a tip. So, Shivam is asking, what has been your most important learnings in your entrepreneurial journey and personal journey? You can drop the personal, but certainly important learning and a tip. So I'll start with Sudeep now rather than the reverse. And Lina, you can end with some words of advice to first-time founders.
I'll keep it very short, but that's a good question, which in fact I seek a lot of mentorship from Lena time to time. But essentially, for somebody who is quite young, like of my age, mid-30s, and building an organization where you can't like resign, right? Which you can do with your job.
Yeah, yeah.
Essentially, there are two essential things I personally feel are very important. One is grit. That is, no matter what kind of situation you face, you always think of solving problem and not give up, right? And second is the ability to pivot, because in all businesses, however the best of business planning we do, however best of the fault diagnosis we do, sometimes when the reality hits, we things might not go in the way how we envision. And that time, a founder's ability needs to be how quick enough I can pivot, how innovative way I can pivot, and how I can save the ship, no matter how turbulent the current is.
Well, Sudeep has given real sage advice. Founders cannot resign. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. Unlike an employee, if you're working in some department, you resign and go. That's it. But you can't. Founders can. Very nice. Yeah. Over to you, Lina. Learnings
Uh,
and some advice for founders.
so I'd always say that you have to take the first step.
Right.
It's really scary, but without action, you can't build any momentum. So that's the first thing I'd say. If you want to start something, just go out there and just take the first step. It's really important. Don't make the first step like really enormous. Like we teach kids if they want to start walking 5-mile marathons, start with putting on your shoes. And and then the second step and third step will happen. I think another one is for me, it's been make sure that you keep your brand trust at the optimum. So that's something I'll always talk to Sudeep about, that when you have to weigh cost versus brand trust, please pick brand trust.
Thank you.
And the third is, I think another thing that Sudeep's seen that I'm my relationships are always intact. Even if someone has really crossed me or been unfair to me in business, I do not ruin the relationship. So I'm known for all the relationships within the industry, whether they work with me or not. And I think anyone who's worked with me would want to work with me again. And so the last thing I'll leave you with is look at your people, look at their growth, look at human potential, and don't make it about you, make it about us, make it about the winning of the entire team, not just your own growth and your own financial outcomes.
Fantastic, fantastic close to this session. Make it about us, its relationship, brand trust. We sometimes forget how important brand trust is. Three really, really fantastic points. And start by wearing shoes today. Marathon will happen.
Yes.
Really great. Thank you, Lina. Thank you, Sudeep. I really enjoyed 45 minutes of this moderation. I didn't even realize how they've gone by. You have given some really, really insightful tips to founders who see this session. And I hope you can come back again after some time to give some further tips. But thank you. We are truly delighted from CII that Lina and Sudeep, both of you agreed to spare this time and share your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close, remember CII Startup Buzz is every Thursday. We get new topics, new people, and today's was filled with advice. This session will get recorded and will be on YouTube. So if you liked it and you want to share it with your friends, watch it on YouTube and do share it. I'm certainly going to do it because I found this full of lot of great advice. And most of it is so simple and easy to follow. It comes from people who have executed ideas, who are in operations, who have done things. And that's what we want all of you founders to learn from this session. Thank you again, Lina, and thank you, Sudeep, for joining
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.